is to make sure everybody appreciates and agrees that these chips are the only way to feed their family. I call them chips on demand. So when I start my cooking show, I actually have the chips already made ahead of time at my home, and in the prep bowl. And I lift the lid and I said, before we start the recipe demonstration, I want you guys to sample something, and you're just not going to believe this. And I said, but I have to ask you guys to do me a favor. I need some sound effects. So not only are you going to put this potato chip that I'm going to give you in your mouth and we're going to hear the crunch, I also want you to say, oh, yeah. I said, everybody has to do that. Got it? You want to practice? Okay. So I walk around, and I do the walking. I love it because I don't ask anybody else to do it. And I said, okay, here we go. And I'll say, and they're like, oh, and I said, oh my gosh, you guys are so good. You're going to do this the rest of my cooking demonstration. This is perfect. And I said, now, were those great? And I said, in fact, Sam says to me, Mom, these chips taste like French fries. They taste like real potatoes. And I said, well, Sam, that's because they are real potatoes. I said, do you guys find that? Do they taste like real potatoes? Yes, they absolutely do. I said, of course they do. And I said, what if I were to tell you you could do chips on demand? So when your family wants potato chips, you can do them on demand, 3 minutes, using a potato that costs you 69 cents. And what if I were to tell you that with that 69-cent potato, you get 9 cups of chips? I said, now, when was the last time you bought a bag of potato chips? I don't do it anymore because we do chips on demand. But for those of you that did, how much were the potato chips? 2 for $5 if you get them on sale. I said, have you ever tried to pronounce the words on the back of the chip bag? You can recognize oil, grease, and potatoes. Nothing else is recognizable because it's all preservatives. And do you really want that in your family's tummy? Are you kidding? Of course you don't. So let me show you what you're going to do. So first of all, you have to have a slicer. If you have a slicer, you're going to love it. You're fine. If not, you're going to love this one. It's a simple slicer. Yes, it is simply a slicer. And then what I do is I teach them how the little prongs are spaced so you can do your grape tomatoes. You can do your carrot chunks. And I said, and this food holder holds such a large tomato and onion. I said, you know, it's fabulous. You're going to fall in love with it. I said, the blade is tucked, so it's very safe. And I said, I do a lot of shows for homeschool moms. So if anybody's homeschool, make sure you book me tonight for your cooking show. And I said, you know, when you go to the store, you want to squeeze the potato. Don't buy bag potatoes. They're cheaper, but they're not any good because you get those potatoes that are old. As you press your fingers into them, they, you know, go under your fingers, which means they're going to grow those warts, and you're going to throw them away. So buy your fresh potato. Remember, these are chips on demand, so they won't last long. You'll use them fresh. And I said, you want to cut two ends. I said, and you put it on, and I show them how to put it on there and push it down. I actually push it down like this so it's secure on the 3 prongs. And then I say, now with number 1, you've got the chips that you just tasted. I said, real chips, right? 3 minutes on high in your microwave with this chip maker. And I bring out the microwave chip maker. And I said, it just has coarse salt. I'll get to the salt in just a minute. And I said, it also does sweet potatoes. Oh my gosh, who loves sweet potato chips? They are so expensive. And I don't want you to put any sugar, nothing on those sweet potatoes. You're getting the core, the inside of that sweet potato, which is so sweet. Do not put any additional sugar on it. I said you can do kale chips, you can do apples. I've never personally done apples, but my daughter does. And you can do tortillas with some cinnamon. Now, I said, there's the investment right there. I said, now, let me show you this. And then I said, you know, let's go to the alphabetized sheet. Make sure you circle simple slicer, and make sure you circle microwave chip maker. Now, if you go to page 20, it's a set, you know, and you're going to buy the set. But I'll remind you when you come up to do the full service checkout. Did I tell you I do offer a full service checkout? And then I go into my full service checkout actually exists. Why does it exist? And then I say, so you will absolutely need both of these if you don't, you know, for your chips on demand. And then I go into the coarse salt because I really feel like everybody should be buying Himalaya salt. High blood pressure, if you're pregnant, if you have diabetes. And then I teach them how the salt is actually pulled from the very bottom depths of the earth. And you can tell it's Himalaya because, number 1, you'll never find it ground for you. And number 2, you'll see the pink flecks. And I said, and when you buy it today, go to page 58, you're going to think, I'll get a grinder. You won't. That Himalaya salt will sit there with no grinder. So go ahead and buy the grinder from the Pampered Chef. You'll love it. It's bamboo. It's beautiful. If you want the set, you'll love that too. But, you know, okay, so now you got it all circled on your appetized sheet. Great. Let's go ahead into a recipe demo. Oh, and I do talk about Sam likes kettle chips. That's where I do kettle chips. Sam likes kettle chips because he likes to be able to dip them in ranch dressing, That's number 2. And then I do put it back on number 2 and show them 2 of the kettle chips. I said they take about 5 or 6 minutes. But I said they're fabulous because they're really sturdy, right? But if you just want chips with your sandwich, you'll go number 1. 3 minutes on high.
Fabulous.
And then too, I sell them to everybody. Everybody buys them because a simple slicer, oh my gosh, it's fabulous. I mean, it's